The wine hit his white shirt like blood, and Jasmine knew her life was over. Vincent Ashford, $12 billion, zero mercy, stared at her with eyes that could freeze hell. But instead of destroying her, he smiled. That terrifying predator smile that meant someone was about to get eaten alive. "What's your name?" he asked, ignoring the stain spreading across his chest. Her throat closed up. "Jasmine Caldwell." His expression changed completely. Recognition. Satisfaction. Pure, calculated hunger. "Well, Jasmine Caldwell," he said loud enough for the entire ballroom to hear. "It seems we have something to discuss." He gestured toward a dark corner, away from the crowd. "Walk with me." It wasn't a request. She followed him, her hands shaking, knowing she was walking straight into a trap she didn't even understand yet. That's when he dropped the bomb that would destroy everything she thought she knew about her father, her family, and the 15-year revenge plot she'd just stumbled into. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now let's get into the story. At the center of it all stood Vincent Ashford, adjusting his platinum cufflinks as another board member praised his latest acquisition. The tech mogul's dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw clean-shaven, his smile practiced. At 34, he'd built an empire worth $12 billion, and tonight's charity gala was just another stage for displaying that power. "Vincent, darling," squealed Patricia Whitman, the mayor's wife, as she air-kissed both his cheeks. "That donation you made to the children's hospital was simply divine. A whole wing. How generous of you." Vincent's smile never wavered, though his eyes remained cold as winter steel. Generous? No. Strategic. Everything he did served a purpose, and tonight's $50 million donation was no different. It was bait. He scanned the crowd, searching for one particular face. James Caldwell had to be here. The man never missed a chance to network among Chicago's elite, especially not when his construction company desperately needed new contracts. What do you think drives a billionaire to make such massive charitable donations? Let me know in the comments below. 20 miles away, in a cramped apartment above a laundromat, Jasmine Caldwell stirred mac and cheese on a hot plate while her 8-year-old daughter Kaya practiced spelling words at their wobbly kitchen table. "Mom, how do you spell beautiful?" Kaya asked, her tongue poking out in concentration. "Beautiful," Jasmine replied, glancing at the clock. Almost 7. She had to leave soon for her second job at the catering company, and Mrs. Rodriguez from downstairs was already late to babysit. Jasmine's reflection caught in the cracked mirror by the door. Her natural hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her dark skin glowing despite the exhaustion in her brown eyes. At 28, she worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat: mornings at a coffee shop, afternoons cleaning offices, and nights serving at fancy events for people who spent more on wine than she made in a month. "Mama, when is Grandpa coming to visit?" Kaya asked, not looking up from her homework. Jasmine's chest tightened. How could she explain that Kaya's grandfather, her own father, had been avoiding them for 2 years? Ever since his business started failing, James Caldwell had become a stranger. No more Sunday dinners, no more bedtime stories for Kaya, no more help with rent when things got really tight. Pride, her mother used to say before she passed, could be a man's greatest weakness. "I don't know, baby," Jasmine said softly. "Maybe soon." The apartment door rattled as Mrs. Rodriguez knocked. "Jasmine, I'm here." Jasmine grabbed her black uniform from the closet, polyester pants and a white button-down shirt that had seen better days. Tonight she'd be serving drinks to millionaires at some fancy hotel, invisible as furniture while they discussed their vacation homes and stock options. "Be good for Mrs. Rodriguez," she told Kaya, kissing her forehead. "I'll be home by midnight. Will you bring me a fancy cookie?" Kaya asked hopefully. "If I can sneak one," Jasmine winked, though her stomach twisted with guilt. She hated taking anything that wasn't offered, but Kaya had so few treats in her life. The bus ride downtown took 45 minutes, giving Jasmine time to rehearse her server smile in the window's reflection. Polite but not too friendly. Professional but not cold. Invisible but efficient. The Drake Hotel's service entrance buzzed with activity as dozens of caterers in identical uniforms rushed to prepare for the evening's event. Jasmine clocked in and grabbed her assigned section, the main ballroom's northeast corner, where Chicago's tech elite would be holding court. "Remember," barked Supervisor Helen Martinez, "these people tip well if you're quick and quiet. Don't linger, don't chat, and definitely don't spill anything. The insurance alone on some of these outfits could buy a car." Jasmine nodded, loading her tray with champagne flutes. The crystal glasses were heavier than she expected, and her wrist was still sore from yesterday's office cleaning shift. But she'd managed worse. The ballroom doors opened, and Jasmine stepped into another world. The ceiling soared 3 stories high, painted with angels and clouds that seemed to move in the soft light. Massive windows overlooked Lake Michigan, where city lights twinkled like fallen stars. Round tables draped in cream silk filled the space, each centerpiece an explosion of white roses and baby's breath. And the people. Jasmine had never seen so much wealth in one room. Diamond necklaces that could pay her rent for years. Watches that cost more than college tuition. Shoes that probably cost more than her car, if she still had a car. She moved through the crowd like a ghost, refilling glasses and collecting empty plates. Fragments of conversation drifted past her ears. "Bought the penthouse for $8 million, but honestly the view is worth twice that. My daughter's Harvard application is a lock with that new gymnasium donation. The Maldives in February, then Switzerland for the spring skiing season." Jasmine's feet were starting to ache in her old flats, but she pushed through. Just a few more hours, and she'd have enough to pay the electric bill and maybe buy Kaya new school shoes. That's when she saw him. Vincent Ashford stood near the windows, surrounded by admirers like a king holding court. Even from across the room, Jasmine could feel his presence. The way people leaned in when he spoke, how the space around him seemed to bend to his will. He was handsome in that cold, untouchable way of very wealthy men. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that probably cost more to maintain than most people's monthly salary. His suit looked like it was sewn directly onto his body, every line perfect. But it was his eyes that made Jasmine pause. Even from a distance, she could see they were calculating, predatory. Like a shark's eyes just before it struck. Vincent's gaze swept the room and landed on someone near the entrance. His entire body went rigid, and for a moment, the mask of polite charm slipped completely. Jasmine followed his stare and saw an older black man in an ill-fitting tuxedo, looking uncomfortable as he shook hands with other guests. Something about him seemed familiar, though she couldn't place it. Vincent's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He began moving through the crowd with deadly purpose, and Jasmine realized she was watching a predator who had just spotted his prey. The collision happened in slow motion. Jasmine was backing away from a table, tray balanced carefully in both hands, when Vincent suddenly stepped into her path. She tried to dodge, but her tired legs weren't quick enough. The corner of her tray caught his chest just as she stumbled, sending 6 glasses of red wine cascading down the front of his perfect white shirt. The ballroom seemed to freeze. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Every eye turned toward them, and Jasmine felt her face burn with shame. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, grabbing napkins from her apron. "I didn't see you, I'm so sorry, please let me." "Don't." Vincent's voice was quiet but sharp as a blade. His eyes locked onto hers, and Jasmine felt pinned like a butterfly to a board. Then something strange happened. Vincent's expression shifted, studying her face with intense curiosity. His head tilted slightly, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "What's your name?" he asked, ignoring the red stain spreading across his shirt. "Jasmine," she whispered, wanting to disappear into the floor. Around them, people were starting to whisper and point. This was it. She'd be fired, probably sued, definitely blacklisted from every catering company in the city. Jasmine what? Her throat felt like sandpaper. Caldwell. Vincent's smile returned, but now it was something altogether more dangerous. Recognition flickered in those cold eyes, followed by something that looked almost like satisfaction. "Well, Jasmine Caldwell," he said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "It seems we have something to discuss." He gestured toward a quiet corner of the ballroom, away from the staring crowd. "Walk with me." It wasn't a request. Should Jasmine trust Vincent despite the accident, or is this the beginning of something much more complicated? Share your thoughts in the comments. Jasmine's hands shook as she followed Vincent to a secluded alcove near the silent auction tables. Her mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Lawsuits, criminal charges, having to explain to Kaya why Mommy couldn't afford groceries anymore. Vincent stopped beside a display of vacation packages to Italy and turned to face her. Up close, he was even more intimidating. The wine stain on his shirt looked like blood in the dim lighting, and his eyes held secrets she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "Relax," he said, his voice softer now but no less commanding. "You're not in trouble." "I'm not." Jasmine's voice came out as a squeak. "No. In fact, you've done me a favor." Vincent glanced back toward the crowd, where people were still stealing glances at them. "Tell me, how long have you been working for the catering company?" 3 months, Jasmine managed. "Look, Mr. Ashford." Vincent Ashford. He watched her face carefully, like he was waiting for some kind of reaction. The name sounded familiar, but Jasmine couldn't place it. Her brain was still stuck on the fact that she'd just destroyed what was probably a $1,000 shirt and somehow wasn't getting arrested. "Mr. Ashford, I can pay for dry cleaning, or replacement, or whatever you need. It might take me some time, but I promise I'll." "How's your father, Jasmine?" The question hit her like a physical blow. "What? James Caldwell. Your father. How is he?" Ice spread through Jasmine's veins. "How do you know my father?" Vincent's smile was all teeth, no warmth. "We have history. Quite a bit of it, actually." Across the ballroom, James Caldwell was making his way through the crowd, pressing flesh and forcing smiles. He looked older than Jasmine remembered, his hair more gray than black now, his shoulders slightly stooped. The tuxedo he wore was clearly rented, the fit just wrong enough to mark him as an outsider in this world of custom tailoring. "I haven't seen him in 2 years, Jasmine said quietly. We don't really talk anymore." "No. That's unfortunate." Vincent's tone suggested it was anything but unfortunate, especially considering what he's about to lose. "What are you talking about?" Vincent pulled out his phone and showed her a news article from that morning. The headline made her stomach drop. "Caldwell Construction faces bankruptcy as major contracts fall through." "Dad's company is failing?" Jasmine whispered, scanning the article. Her father had built that business from nothing, working 18-hour days to provide for their family when she was growing up. It was his whole identity, his pride and joy. More than failing. He'll be completely ruined within the month. Vincent slipped the phone back into his pocket. Unless, of course, someone were to throw him a lifeline. "Someone like you." "Exactly like me." Jasmine stared at him, trying to understand. "Why would you help him? You don't even know him." Vincent's laugh was cold enough to freeze champagne. "Oh, but I do know James Caldwell. Very well, in fact. He was my father's business partner 15 years ago." The pieces started clicking together in Jasmine's memory. Her father used to talk about a partnership he'd had early in his career, before he went out on his own. Something about a falling out, lawyers, bitter feelings. But he'd never mentioned names. "What happened between you?" "Your father stole everything from mine." Vincent's mask slipped completely now, revealing raw hatred underneath. Patents, contracts, clients. He took it all when he left the partnership. My father never recovered. He died broke and broken 3 years later. Jasmine felt like she was drowning. That can't be true. My father isn't. He wouldn't. Wouldn't he? Vincent stepped closer, and Jasmine caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with wine. The James Caldwell I knew was ambitious, ruthless when he needed to be. Sound familiar? It did, though Jasmine hated admitting it. Her father had always been driven to succeed, sometimes at the expense of everything else, including his own family. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "It's what I want for you," Vincent corrected. "Your father owes a debt, to my family, to my father's memory. But I'm not an unreasonable man. I believe in giving people chances to make things right." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, pressing it into her trembling hand. The cardstock was thick and expensive, embossed with gold lettering. Vincent Ashford, Chief Executive Officer, Ashford Technologies. "I'm prepared to save your father's company. Bail him out completely. Give him enough contracts to rebuild everything he's lost." In exchange for what? Vincent's smile returned, predatory and sure. "You." The word hung in the air like smoke. Jasmine felt the walls of the alcove closing in around her. "I don't understand." "I think you do." Vincent leaned against the auction table, casual as a cat playing with a mouse. "I need a companion for certain social events. Someone beautiful, intelligent, well-mannered. Someone who can hold a conversation at a dinner party and look stunning in an evening gown." "You want me to be your—" "What?" "Your escort. My girlfriend. Publicly, at least." Vincent's eyes never left her face. 6 months. You attend events with me, smile for photographers, play the part of the devoted partner. In return, your father's debts disappear and Caldwell Construction gets the contracts it needs to thrive. What would you do if someone offered to save your family in exchange for 6 months of your life? Let me know your thoughts below. Jasmine's mind reeled. This is insane. You can't just buy people. I'm not buying you. I'm offering you a choice. Vincent straightened his cufflinks, the gesture casual and practiced. Your father will be completely ruined within weeks. His business, his house, his reputation, all gone. He'll spend his remaining years broken and bitter, just like my father did. Unless I agree to be your fake girlfriend. Unless you help me balance the scales. Jasmine looked across the ballroom at her father, who was deep in conversation with a group of potential clients. Even from a distance, she could see the desperation in his posture, the way he laughed too loudly at their jokes and leaned in too eagerly when they spoke. When had he become so small? "Why me?" she asked. "You could have any woman in this room. But they're not James Caldwell's daughter." Vincent's voice carried a satisfaction that made Jasmine's skin crawl. "They don't give me what I really want." Which is justice. Closure. The knowledge that the man who destroyed my family is now completely dependent on my mercy. The cruelty of it took Jasmine's breath away. This wasn't about business or money. It was about revenge. Cold, calculated revenge that had been simmering for 15 years. "And if I say no?" Vincent shrugged. "Then I do nothing. Your father loses everything, and you continue working 3 jobs to keep your head above water. How is that working out for you, by the way? The coffee shop, the office cleaning, the catering gigs." Jasmine jerked back like he'd slapped her. "How do you know about?" "I make it my business to know things." Vincent's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Like the fact that you're behind on rent, or that your daughter needs new school clothes, or that you've been putting off your own medical checkups because you can't afford the copays." Heat flooded Jasmine's cheeks. "You investigated me?" "Due diligence. I needed to understand what leverage I was working with." Leverage. The word tasted bitter in her mouth. "Is that what Kaya and I are to you?" You're the key to getting what I want. What happens after that depends entirely on how well you play your part." Jasmine closed her eyes, trying to think clearly. 6 months. Half a year of pretending to love a man who saw her as nothing more than a tool for revenge. But in exchange, her father would be saved, and she and Kaya could finally stop living paycheck to paycheck. "I need time to think about this." "Of course." Vincent glanced at his wine-stained shirt and smiled. "Take all the time you need. But remember, time is something your father doesn't have much of." He started to walk away, then paused. "Oh, and Jasmine, don't bother telling your father about our conversation. He wouldn't believe you anyway. James Caldwell has always been very good at convincing himself he's the hero of his own story." Vincent melted back into the crowd, leaving Jasmine alone with the weight of an impossible choice. Around her, the party continued as if nothing had changed, but her world had tilted completely off its axis. She watched her father across the room, saw him check his phone with growing anxiety, witnessed the forced cheerfulness that couldn't quite hide his desperation. How long had he been struggling? How long had he been too proud to ask for help? Her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez. "Kaya asking when you come home. She drew you a picture." Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. Everything she did, every choice she made, came back to Kaya. Her beautiful, brilliant daughter who deserved so much more than a mother who cleaned toilets and served drinks to people who wouldn't even see her as human. Vincent Ashford was offering her a way out. A twisted, morally complicated way out, but still a chance for something better. The question was, what price was she willing to pay for her family's freedom? As the evening wore on, Jasmine moved through her duties like a sleepwalker. She refilled glasses, cleared plates, and smiled politely while her mind churned with possibilities and consequences. Near the end of the night, as guests began filtering toward the exits, she found herself face to face with her father for the first time in 2 years. "Jasmine." James Caldwell's eyes widened in shock. "What are you doing here?" "Working," she said simply. He looked around quickly, as if checking to see who might be watching. "Honey, you shouldn't be. I mean, this isn't the kind of place." "The kind of place for people like me?" Jasmine's voice was steady, but inside she was breaking. "I know what I am, Dad. The question is, do you know what you are?" James's face crumpled slightly. "Jasmine, I wanted to call, things have been complicated." "Complicated?" She almost laughed. "Is that what we're calling it? Your grandfather's medical bills, the business struggles. I didn't want to burden you with my problems. So instead you just disappeared from our lives completely?" They stood there in the emptying ballroom, two people who had once been everything to each other, now separated by pride and silence and too many years of hurt. "How's Kaya?" James asked quietly. "She asks about you every week." Jasmine's throat tightened. "I keep telling her you'll visit soon." "I will. I promise, as soon as things get better." "And when will that be, Dad? When exactly are things going to get better?" James couldn't meet her eyes. "Soon. There are some deals in the works, some opportunities." Lies. Jasmine could hear them in every word. Her father was drowning, and he was too proud to reach for the life preserver she might be able to throw him. If she was brave enough to take Vincent's deal. Do you think Jasmine should trust Vincent's offer? Or is this revenge plot too dangerous to risk? Drop your opinion in the comments. As her father walked away, shoulders bent with invisible weight, Jasmine made her decision. She pulled out Vincent's business card and ran her thumb over the raised lettering. Tomorrow she would call him. Tonight, she would go home to Kaya and try to figure out how to explain that their lives were about to change forever. But first, she had one more service to complete. One more tray of glasses to collect. One more mess to clean up. Just like always. 3 weeks later, Jasmine stood in front of a floor-length mirror in a downtown boutique, staring at a stranger. The emerald green silk dress hugged her curves perfectly, and the diamond earrings Vincent had insisted she wore caught the light like captured stars. Her natural hair had been styled into an elegant updo that showcased her neck and shoulders. She looked beautiful. She looked expensive. She looked like she belonged in Vincent's world. She also looked miserable. "Perfect," Vincent said from behind her, his reflection appearing in the mirror. He'd changed into a fresh white shirt and navy suit, the wine stain from their first meeting nothing but a memory. "You clean up nicely, Jasmine." "Thank you," she replied automatically, though the words felt like ash in her mouth. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of transformation. Vincent had paid off her rent, moved her and Kaya to a spacious apartment in Lincoln Park, and deposited enough money in her bank account to make her dizzy. True to his word, Caldwell Construction had suddenly received 3 major contracts, pulling her father back from the brink of bankruptcy. But every gift came with strings attached, and Jasmine could feel them tightening around her like a web. "Remember," Vincent said, adjusting his cufflinks, "tonight's dinner is with the Hartwell Foundation Board. They're considering Ashford Technologies for a major partnership. I need you to be charming, intelligent, but not too opinionated. Can you handle that?" Jasmine nodded, though inside she bristled. For 3 weeks she'd been playing the role of the perfect girlfriend, smiling on his arm at galas, laughing at his jokes for photographers, letting him introduce her as "my Jasmine" like she was a possession he'd acquired. The worst part was how good he was at it. Vincent could be incredibly charming when he wanted to be, making her laugh despite herself, remembering exactly how she liked her coffee, even asking about Kaya's school performance. Sometimes, in quiet moments, Jasmine almost forgot this was all an elaborate revenge plot. Almost. "Your father called me yesterday," Vincent mentioned casually as they walked toward his car. "He wanted to thank me personally for the contracts." Jasmine's stomach clenched. "What did you tell him?" "That I was happy to help a fellow businessman." Vincent's smile was razor-sharp. He has no idea that his salvation came at the cost of his daughter's freedom. "This isn't freedom," Jasmine said quietly. "This is just a prettier cage." Vincent stopped walking and turned to face her. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Regret? Doubt? But it was gone so quickly she might have imagined it. 3 more months, Jasmine. Then you'll be free to go, and your father will be secure. Surely you can endure 3 more months. Could she? Jasmine wasn't sure anymore. The line between performance and reality was blurring in dangerous ways. Sometimes she caught herself actually enjoying Vincent's company, forgetting that every touch, every smile, every gentle word was calculated for maximum impact. The dinner was held at an exclusive private club on the Gold Coast, the kind of place that had been serving Chicago's elite for over a century. Ancient oil paintings lined the walls, and the scent of aged leather and expensive cigars hung in the air like incense. Vincent guided her through the crowd with practiced ease, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. Jasmine smiled and made polite conversation, playing her part to perfection while her mind wandered to Kaya, who was probably doing homework at their new kitchen table. "Vincent!" boomed a voice from across the room. "There's the man of the hour." Richard Hartwell approached them, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes. Behind him walked a woman Jasmine recognized from newspaper society pages. Margaret Hartwell, the Foundation's director and Richard's daughter. "Richard, always a pleasure," Vincent said, shaking the older man's hand. "I'd like you to meet Jasmine Caldwell, my girlfriend." "Charming," Richard smiled, kissing Jasmine's hand in an old-fashioned gesture. "Vincent's been keeping you a secret, my dear." "Not intentionally," Jasmine replied, finding her smile coming more easily with the Hartwells than it ever did with Vincent's usual crowd. There was genuine warmth in their eyes, not the calculating coldness she'd grown used to. As dinner progressed, Jasmine found herself genuinely engaged in conversation with Margaret about the Foundation's work with underprivileged children. It was real work, important work, and for the first time in weeks, Jasmine felt like herself again instead of Vincent's carefully crafted creation. You should visit our center sometime, Margaret suggested. We're always looking for volunteers who understand what these kids are going through. I'd love that, Jasmine said, meaning it completely. Vincent's hand found hers under the table, squeezing just hard enough to remind her not to get too comfortable. She was here to serve his purposes, not to make real connections. After dinner, Vincent excused himself to take a business call, leaving Jasmine alone at the table with the Hartwells. She expected them to ignore her or make polite small talk, but instead, Margaret leaned forward with concern in her eyes. Are you all right, dear? You seem troubled. The kindness in her voice nearly broke Jasmine's composure. I'm fine, thank you. Are you? Richard studied her with the sharp eyes of someone who'd spent decades reading people. Because you look like someone who's carrying a very heavy burden. Jasmine's throat tightened. Really, I'm. My dear, Margaret interrupted gently. I've been working with people in crisis for 30 years. I know the signs. Whatever Vincent has over you, whatever hold he has, there are people who can help. The words hit Jasmine like a physical blow. Was it that obvious? Could everyone see through the charade, or were the Hartwells just more perceptive than most? I don't know what you mean, Jasmine said weakly. Don't you? Richard's voice was soft but knowing. Vincent Ashford is a brilliant businessman, but he's also a man who's never learned to let go of old grudges. We've known him for years, watched him build his empire on the foundation of his father's failures. It's made him complicated. Margaret reached across the table and squeezed Jasmine's hand. Whatever arrangement you have with him, remember that you always have choices. Always. Before Jasmine could respond, Vincent returned, sliding back into his seat with the predatory grace she'd come to know so well. Sorry about that, he said, though his eyes moved suspiciously between Jasmine and the Hartwells. Business never sleeps. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and careful conversation. But the Hartwells' words echoed in Jasmine's mind like a mantra. You always have choices. Later that night, in the silence of her new apartment, Jasmine sat at Kaya's bedside watching her daughter sleep. The little girl looked so peaceful, so secure in their beautiful new home. How could Jasmine even think about disrupting that stability? Her phone buzzed with a text from Vincent. You did well tonight. The Hartwells were impressed. Jasmine stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without responding. The next morning brought a phone call that changed everything. Jasmine. Her father's voice was shaky, uncertain. Can we talk? I mean, really talk. They met at a small coffee shop near her old neighborhood, far from the gleaming towers of downtown where Vincent conducted his business. James looked better than he had in months. The desperate edge was gone from his eyes, replaced by something that looked almost like peace. The contracts, he said without preamble. They came from Vincent Ashford, didn't they? Jasmine nearly choked on her coffee. Dad, I did some digging after I met him at that gala. The timing was too convenient, the terms too generous. Then I saw the pictures. Pictures. James pulled out his phone and showed her a society page photo from the previous week's charity event. There she was, radiant in a blue gown, Vincent's arm around her waist as they smiled for the camera. You look beautiful, James said quietly. You also look miserable. Jasmine's carefully constructed walls crumbled. Dad, it's not what you think. Isn't it? James reached across the table and took her hand. Honey, I know I haven't been the father you deserved. I know I let my pride get in the way of our relationship. But I also know my daughter, and this isn't you. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. I didn't have a choice. He said you'd lose everything and Kaya needed stability, and I thought I could handle it for 6 months, but what, sweetheart? But I'm starting to care about him, Jasmine whispered, the admission ripping from her throat like a confession. And I hate myself for it because this is all just revenge to him. I'm just a way to hurt you, and I'm falling for it like the stupid, desperate woman he thinks I am. James was quiet for a long moment, processing her words. Tell me about his father. What? Vincent's father. Tell me what he told you. Jasmine recounted Vincent's story. The partnership, the betrayal, the broken man who died penniless and bitter. With each word, her father's face grew more troubled. Jasmine, he said finally, that's not what happened. What do you mean? James ran a hand through his graying hair. Vincent's father, Thomas Ashford. He was my partner, yes. But he wasn't the victim in our story. Have you ever discovered that everything you believed about a situation was completely wrong? Share your experience below. I don't understand. Thomas was brilliant, but he was also ruthless. He was embezzling from our clients, cutting corners on safety inspections, bribing building inspectors. When I found out, I gave him a choice. Come clean and make it right, or I'd go to the authorities myself. Jasmine felt the world tilt beneath her feet. And he chose to disappear instead. Took half our assets and fled to the Cayman Islands, leaving me to face the music with our clients and the legal system. I nearly lost everything trying to make good on his debts and cover the damages from his shoddy work. But Vincent said you stole everything from his father. Thomas probably told him that. It's easier to paint yourself as the victim than admit you destroyed your own family with greed and corruption. James's voice was heavy with old pain. I tried to contact Vincent after Thomas died, wanted to explain what really happened. But he wouldn't see me. Wouldn't even take my calls. Jasmine's mind raced, trying to process this new information. If her father was telling the truth, then Vincent's entire revenge plot was based on a lie. Everything he'd done to her, to her family, was built on false foundation. Dad, do you have any proof? Any documents from back then? Some. I kept everything, thinking someday Vincent might want to know the truth about his father. James pulled out his phone. I can show you the police reports, the embezzlement evidence, the safety violations. It's all there. Jasmine stared at the phone, her heart hammering in her chest. Here was the truth Vincent had been running from for 15 years. Here was the key to understanding why a brilliant, successful man had spent so much energy on elaborate revenge schemes. But it was also dangerous knowledge. Vincent had built his entire identity around being his father's avenger. What would he do if that identity crumbled? I have to tell him, she said finally. Jasmine, no. This man has you trapped in some kind of twisted arrangement. If you confront him with this, then maybe he'll finally understand that his father wasn't the man he thought he was. Jasmine stood up, her mind already racing with plans. Maybe he'll finally be able to let go of all this anger and pain. Or maybe he'll destroy you for taking away the only thing that's motivated him for the past 15 years. That was the risk, Jasmine knew. But she also knew she couldn't keep living a lie, couldn't keep letting Vincent poison himself with false hatred while she pretended to love him for money. She had to try to save him, even if it meant risking everything. That evening, Jasmine called Vincent and asked him to come to her apartment. She'd spent hours rehearsing what she would say, how she would present the evidence, how she would help him see the truth without destroying him completely. Vincent arrived at 8 o'clock sharp, carrying a bottle of expensive wine and wearing the soft smile he reserved for their private moments. He looked relaxed, almost happy, and Jasmine's heart clenched at what she was about to do to him. "This is a nice surprise," he said, kissing her cheek. "I thought you had plans with Kaya tonight." "She's at a sleepover." Jasmine led him to the living room, where she'd spread out copies of her father's documents on the coffee table. "Vincent, we need to talk." He noticed the papers immediately, his body going rigid. "What is this?" "The truth about your father and mine." Vincent's face went completely blank, the mask sliding into place so smoothly it took Jasmine's breath away. "I see. And what truth would that be?" Jasmine took a deep breath and began to explain everything her father had told her. She showed him the police reports documenting Thomas Ashford's embezzlement, the safety violations that had nearly killed 3 construction workers, the evidence trail that painted a picture of a man who'd chosen greed over family. With each revelation, Vincent grew quieter, more still, until he seemed like a statue carved from ice. "You're lying," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Vincent, I know this is hard to hear, but you're lying." The explosion of rage was sudden and terrifying. Vincent swept the papers off the coffee table, sending them flying across the room. "My father was a good man. He was honest and hard-working, and your father destroyed him." "Your father destroyed himself," Jasmine said quietly. "And he's been destroying you ever since." Vincent turned on her then, his eyes blazing with fury and something that looked almost like fear. "How much did James pay you to say this? How much did it cost to buy my girlfriend's loyalty?" "No one paid me anything. I'm telling you this because I care about you." "Care about me?" Vincent laughed, the sound harsh and broken. "You're a hired actress, Jasmine. Don't confuse your performance with reality." The words hit her like a slap, but Jasmine stood her ground. "Is that what you think this is? Just a performance? Isn't it? You agreed to play my girlfriend for 6 months in exchange for your father's financial salvation. Nothing more, nothing less." "That's how it started," Jasmine admitted. "But somewhere along the way it became real for me. At least, my feelings became real." Vincent stared at her for a long moment, and she saw something shift in his expression. Confusion, hope, fear, a whole spectrum of emotions that he quickly buried under his usual mask of control. "Even if that were true," he said carefully, "it doesn't change anything. These documents, this story about my father, it's all irrelevant." "How can you say that? This is your life, Vincent. This anger, this need for revenge. It's been controlling you for 15 years. Don't you want to be free of it?" "Free?" Vincent's smile was sharp enough to cut. "I am free. I'm rich, powerful, successful. I have everything I ever wanted. Except happiness. Except peace. Except the ability to trust anyone or let anyone get close to you. I don't need those things. Everyone needs those things." Jasmine stepped closer to him, close enough to see the pain he was trying so hard to hide. "Vincent, you've spent so long building walls around your heart that you can't even see the prison you've created for yourself." For a moment, just a moment, those walls seemed to crack. Vincent's mask slipped, and Jasmine saw the lost, hurt boy underneath. The child who'd watched his father spiral into bitterness and failure, who'd carried that pain like a stone in his chest for his entire adult life. Then the moment passed, and the walls slammed back into place. "This conversation is over," Vincent said coldly. "Pack your things. You'll be moved back to your old apartment by tomorrow morning." "Vincent, please. Our arrangement is terminated. Your father can keep the contracts. I'm not petty enough to punish him for your betrayal. But you and I are done." He headed for the door, then paused without turning around. "For what it's worth, you were very convincing. I almost believed you actually cared." The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Jasmine alone with the scattered papers and the wreckage of her heart. She'd lost him. She'd tried to save him from his own demons and instead had driven him further into the darkness. The truth had set her free, but it had also cost her the man she'd fallen in love with. The man who was too afraid to love her back. Do you think Jasmine was right to tell Vincent the truth, even though it cost her everything? What would you have done in her situation? But Jasmine's story wasn't over yet. The next morning brought a knock at her door that she wasn't expecting. Margaret Hartwell stood in the hallway, elegant as always but with worry lines creasing her forehead. "May I come in, dear?" Jasmine stepped aside, too surprised to do anything else. "Mrs. Hartwell, how did you know where I lived?" "Vincent gave me your address. He asked me to help you with the transition back to your previous living situation." Margaret's kind eyes took in the packed boxes, the documents still scattered across the floor. "He also asked me to give you this." She handed Jasmine an envelope with her name written in Vincent's precise handwriting. Inside was a check for enough money to keep her and Kaya comfortable for years, along with a brief note, for services rendered. Thank you for your professionalism. The cold formality of it made Jasmine's chest ache. He's hurting, Margaret said gently. More than I've ever seen him. He's angry, Jasmine corrected. There's a difference. Is there? In my experience, the angriest people are often the ones carrying the deepest pain. Margaret sat down on Jasmine's couch and gestured for her to do the same. Vincent came to see Richard and me this morning. He was agitated. Kept talking about lies and betrayals and how he couldn't trust anyone. He found out some difficult truths about his father. Yes, he mentioned that. He also mentioned that these truths came from someone he'd grown to care about, which made them even harder to accept. Jasmine's heart jumped. He said he cared about me? Not in so many words. But Richard and I have known Vincent for a long time, and we've never seen him as affected by anyone as he was this morning. Margaret studied Jasmine's face carefully. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What can I do? He doesn't want to see me. Men like Vincent often say things they don't mean when they're frightened. And make no mistake, dear. He is frightened. Terrified, actually. Of what? Of needing someone. Of being vulnerable. Of discovering that everything he's built his identity around was a lie. Margaret reached over and squeezed Jasmine's hand. But mostly, I think he's terrified of how much he's come to depend on you. A spark of hope flickered in Jasmine's chest. Even if that's true, how do I reach him? He's made it clear he doesn't want anything to do with me. Margaret smiled, and for the first time since Vincent had walked out, Jasmine felt like maybe the story wasn't over yet. Leave that to me, dear. I have an idea. 3 days later, Vincent stood in his penthouse office, staring out at the Chicago skyline while his assistant briefed him on the day's schedule. He'd thrown himself into work since ending things with Jasmine, staying at the office until midnight and arriving before dawn. If he kept busy enough, he could almost forget the way she'd looked at him when she'd tried to tell him the truth about his father. Almost. Sir. His assistant's voice cut through his brooding. Mrs. Hartwell is here to see you. She says it's urgent. Vincent sighed. He'd been avoiding Margaret's calls since their last conversation, when she'd tried to convince him that he was making a mistake by cutting Jasmine out of his life. Send her in. Margaret entered his office like a woman on a mission, her usually warm demeanor replaced by something much more determined. Vincent, we need to talk. If this is about Jasmine, it's about you. Margaret sat down across from his desk without waiting for an invitation. And the foundation partnership you're so eager to secure. Vincent's attention sharpened. The Hartwell Foundation contract was worth hundreds of millions of dollars, not to mention the prestige that came with it. What about it? Richard and I have decided not to move forward with Ashford Technologies. The words hit Vincent like a physical blow. What? Why? Because we don't do business with cowards. Vincent's jaw tightened. I beg your pardon. You heard me. We've built our foundation on the principle of helping people overcome difficult circumstances, of finding strength in vulnerability. We can't partner with someone who runs away the moment things get emotionally complicated. This has nothing to do with business. It has everything to do with business. Margaret leaned forward, her eyes blazing. Character matters, Vincent. Integrity matters. And right now you're showing a distinct lack of both. Because I ended a fake relationship that had served its purpose? Because you threw away the best thing that ever happened to you out of pride and fear? Vincent stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. You don't understand the situation. Don't I? A young woman risked everything to tell you a truth that she knew would hurt you, because she cared more about your healing than her own comfort. And instead of recognizing that incredible gift, you punished her for it. She lied to me. She and her father. She told you the truth about your father, And you couldn't handle it because it meant admitting you've wasted 15 years of your life on a lie. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Vincent's hands clenched into fists as he stared out at the city below. "My father was a good man," he said quietly. "Your father was a flawed man who made terrible choices. Just like all of us." Margaret's voice softened. "Vincent, holding on to this anger isn't honoring his memory. It's destroying your future." "What future?" "I have everything I want." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you look like the loneliest man in Chicago." Vincent closed his eyes, feeling the truth of her words settle into his bones. He was lonely. He had been for years, maybe decades. But loneliness was safer than vulnerability. Easier than risking his heart on someone who might leave. "Even if you're right," he said finally, "it's too late. I destroyed any chance I had with Jasmine." "Did you? Or are you just afraid to find out if forgiveness is possible?" Margaret stood up and moved to stand beside him at the window. "That young woman loves you, Vincent. Not your money, not your power, not the image you project to the world. She loves the man underneath all of that. The one you're so afraid to let anyone see." "How can you be so sure?" "Because she's downstairs in our car, and she's been there for 2 hours waiting for the chance to talk to you. Even after everything you put her through, she's still fighting for you." Vincent's heart stopped. "She's here. She's here. The question is, are you brave enough to go to her?" Vincent looked down at the street far below, where he could just make out a familiar figure sitting in the back of a black sedan. Even from 30 floors up, seeing Jasmine made his chest tight with longing. "What if I can't be the man she deserves?" he asked quietly. "What if you can be exactly the man she needs?" For a long moment, Vincent stood frozen between fear and hope. Then, slowly, he turned toward the door. "Margaret." "Yes. Thank you." Vincent took the elevator down 30 floors, his heart hammering with each passing second. By the time he reached the lobby, his palms were sweating and his carefully constructed composure was in tatters. Jasmine was still in the car, staring out at the busy street. She looked beautiful but tired, and Vincent could see the tension in her shoulders even from a distance. He opened the car door and slid in beside her, close enough to catch her familiar scent but careful not to touch her. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi." Jasmine's voice was barely above a whisper. "Margaret said you might want to talk." "I do. But first, I owe you an apology." Jasmine turned to look at him fully, and Vincent was struck again by how expressive her dark eyes were. Right now, they held wariness and hope in equal measure. "You don't owe me anything." "I owe you everything," Vincent corrected. "You tried to give me the truth, and I punished you for it because I was too much of a coward to accept it." "Vincent, let me finish. Please." He took a shaky breath. "I spent so many years believing my father was perfect, that he was some kind of martyred saint who'd been wronged by the world. It was easier than accepting that he was just human, flawed, capable of making terrible mistakes." Jasmine reached over and took his hand, and Vincent felt some of the ice around his heart begin to melt. "I read through all the documents you showed me," he continued. "I hired investigators to verify the information. You were right about everything. My father was guilty of all of it. The embezzlement, the safety violations, the lies." "I'm sorry," Jasmine said softly. "I know how much it must hurt to learn that." "It does hurt. But you know what hurts more? Realizing that I've spent 15 years of my life consumed by pointless anger. That I've hurt innocent people, including you, because I couldn't let go of a lie." Vincent turned in his seat to face her fully. "Jasmine, I don't know if I can be the man you deserve. I don't know if I can learn to trust, or be vulnerable, or any of the things that real relationships require. But I know I want to try." "Why?" The simple question hung between them, loaded with possibility and danger. "Because somewhere in the middle of this elaborate revenge plot, I fell in love with you. The real you, not the woman I was trying to manipulate, but the one who works 3 jobs to take care of her daughter, who spends her last dollar on school supplies, who risks everything to tell a stubborn man the truth he needs to hear." Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. "Vincent, I love your strength, your kindness, your fierce loyalty to your family. I love the way you make me want to be better than I am. And I love that you saw something worth saving in me, even when I couldn't see it myself." "I love you too," Jasmine whispered, the words spilling out like a confession. "I tried to keep it professional, but you made it impossible. Even after everything I put you through? Especially after everything you put us through. Because I got to see who you really are underneath all that armor. And he's worth fighting for." Vincent cupped her face in his hands, marveling at the softness of her skin, the warmth in her eyes. "What happens now? Now we figure it out together. The real way this time. No contracts, no arrangements, no revenge plots. Just 2 people who love each other trying to build something real." Vincent kissed her then, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as she responded. It felt like coming home after a long journey, like finding something he hadn't even known he was looking for. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Jasmine smiled at him with such radiant joy that Vincent felt the last of his walls crumble completely. "There's something I need to do," he said. "Something I should have done years ago." An hour later, Vincent stood on the front porch of a modest house in Oak Park, Jasmine beside him for moral support. His hands shook slightly as he rang the doorbell. James Caldwell opened the door, his expression cycling through surprise, wariness, and finally resignation. "Vincent. Mr. Caldwell. I was hoping we could talk." James stepped aside to let them in, his eyes moving between Vincent and his daughter with confusion and concern. "Dad," Jasmine said gently, "Vincent has something he wants to say to you." They sat in James's living room, surrounded by photos of Jasmine and Kaya at various ages. Vincent felt the weight of 15 years of misplaced anger pressing down on his shoulders. "I owe you an apology," he began. "A huge one." James raised an eyebrow. "Oh. I blamed you for my father's failures. I spent years plotting revenge against an innocent man because I couldn't accept the truth about who my father really was." Vincent's voice grew stronger as he continued. "Thomas Ashford was guilty of everything you tried to expose. The embezzlement, the safety violations, the corruption. You tried to do the right thing, and he punished you for it." James was quiet for a long moment. "I tried to tell you that, son. Years ago when your father first passed. You wouldn't listen. I know. I wasn't ready to hear it." Vincent looked at Jasmine, drawing strength from her encouraging smile. "But I'm ready now. And I want to make things right." "What did you have in mind?" "A partnership. A real one this time. Caldwell Construction and Ashford Technologies. Working together on projects that matter. Building things that last, helping communities, creating jobs." Vincent's voice grew more passionate as he spoke. "The kind of company my father could have built if he'd made different choices." James studied him carefully. "And what about Jasmine? What about this arrangement you had with my daughter?" "There is no arrangement. Not anymore." Vincent reached over and took Jasmine's hand. "I'm hoping she'll give me the chance to earn her love the right way. With honesty, respect, and time. And if she does." Vincent looked into Jasmine's eyes and saw his future reflected there. "Then I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy of it." What do you think makes a relationship worth fighting for? Share your thoughts in the comments below. 6 months later, Jasmine stood in the same ballroom where she'd first spilled wine on Vincent's shirt, but everything was different now. She wore a stunning white dress that she'd chosen herself, not because it served someone else's agenda but because it made her feel beautiful. Vincent stood beside her in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, but the cold calculation in his eyes had been replaced by warmth and love. They were hosting a fundraiser for the Hartwell Foundation's new children's center, and the room was filled with Chicago's elite writing checks for a cause they actually cared about. "Can you believe this?" Jasmine murmured to Vincent as they watched Margaret Hartwell announce that they'd exceeded their fundraising goal by $3 million. "Which part? That we raised enough money to build an entire wing, or that your father and I managed to plan this whole event without killing each other?" Jasmine laughed, glancing over at where James was deep in conversation with several potential construction clients. The partnership between Caldwell Construction and Ashford Technologies had exceeded everyone's expectations, including their own. "I was thinking more about the fact that we're here together, for real this time." Vincent's expression grew serious. "Jasmine, there's something I need to ask you." "Vincent, no," she said quickly, recognizing the look in his eyes. "Not here, not in front of all these people." But he was already dropping to one knee, pulling out a ring box that made several nearby guests gasp in delight. "Jasmine Caldwell," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. 6 months ago, you spilled wine on my shirt and changed my life forever. You showed me what real love looks like, what it means to put family first, what it costs to tell the truth even when it hurts." Tears streamed down Jasmine's face as the entire room fell silent, everyone watching their love story unfold. "You saved me from myself, from a life built on anger and lies. You gave me hope, purpose, and a future I never dreamed was possible." Vincent opened the ring box, revealing a stunning solitaire that caught the light like captured fire. "Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that some love stories really do have happy endings?" Jasmine looked around the ballroom at all the faces watching them. Margaret and Richard beaming with joy, her father wiping away tears, even the servers stopping their work to witness this moment. A year ago, she'd been invisible in rooms like this, just another working woman struggling to make ends meet. Now she was the center of attention, not because of the man beside her or the money he represented, but because of the love they'd built together through honesty, forgiveness, and the courage to be vulnerable. "Yes," she said, the word ringing out clear and strong. "Yes, Vincent Ashford, I will marry you." The ballroom erupted in applause as Vincent slipped the ring onto her finger and swept her into his arms. But Jasmine barely heard the noise, lost in the kiss that tasted like wine and promises and the rest of their lives together. Later, as the evening wound down and guests began to filter out into the Chicago night, Jasmine and Vincent found themselves alone on the hotel's terrace overlooking Lake Michigan. "Any regrets?" Vincent asked, pulling her close against the cool evening air. "About saying yes?" "Never." Jasmine studied his face in the moonlight, still amazed that this man was hers. "About everything we went through to get here?" "Not a single one." "Even the lies? Even the manipulation?" Jasmine considered this seriously. "I think sometimes we have to go through the darkness to appreciate the light. If we'd met any other way, would you have been ready to let someone in?" Vincent was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Probably not. I was so buried in anger and pain that I couldn't see past my own need for revenge. And I was so focused on just surviving that I never believed I deserved real love." Jasmine touched the ring on her finger, still not quite believing it was real. "Maybe we both needed to be broken open before we could let each other in." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the lights of the city reflect on the dark water. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of Chicago coming alive for another night. Car horns, distant music, the rumble of the L train carrying people home to their families. "There's something else," Vincent said eventually. "Something I haven't told you yet." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "More secrets, Mr. Ashford?" "One last one." Vincent pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "I've been working on this for months, but I wanted to wait until tonight to give it to you." Jasmine opened the envelope and gasped. Inside were legal documents establishing the Jasmine Caldwell Foundation for Single Mothers, with an initial endowment of $50 million. "Vincent, this is—" "I can't." "You can and you will." His voice was firm but gentle. You know what it's like to work 3 jobs and still struggle to make ends meet. You know what it's like to choose between your own needs and your child's. No other woman should have to go through what you went through. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears as she read through the documents. The foundation would provide childcare, job training, housing assistance, and educational scholarships for single mothers trying to build better lives for their families. This is my real legacy, Vincent continued. Not revenge, not proving I'm better than my father's enemies. This. Helping people the way you helped me. We'll help people, Jasmine corrected. This is our foundation, our mission. Vincent kissed her forehead. I love the sound of that. Our mission. A burst of laughter from inside the ballroom reminded them that their celebration was still going on. Through the terrace doors, they could see Kaya spinning on the dance floor with James, both of them laughing as he attempted to teach her a waltz. Look at them, Jasmine said, her heart full to bursting. 6 months ago, Kaya barely knew her grandfather existed. Now they're inseparable. Family has a way of healing itself when people are willing to try. Speaking of family. Jasmine turned in Vincent's arms, suddenly nervous. There's something I need to tell you too. Vincent's expression grew concerned. What is it? I saw a doctor last week. Just a routine checkup, but... Jasmine took a deep breath. Vincent, I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and promise. Vincent's face went through a series of expressions. Shock, wonder, joy, and finally pure, radiant happiness. Pregnant? He whispered. We're having a baby? We're having a baby, Jasmine confirmed, laughing as Vincent spun her around on the terrace. When? 7 months. Right around Christmas. Vincent set her down gently, his hands immediately moving to her still flat stomach. A Christmas baby. A new beginning. Are you happy? Jasmine asked, suddenly uncertain. They'd never talked about having children together, never planned for this possibility. Happy? Vincent's laugh was pure joy. Jasmine, I've never been happier in my entire life. A year ago I thought I had everything. Now I realize I had nothing that mattered. He knelt down and pressed a gentle kiss to her stomach. Hello in there, little one. You're going to have the most amazing mother in the world, and I promise to spend every day trying to be worthy of being your father. Jasmine ran her fingers through his hair, overwhelmed by the love she felt for this man who'd started as her captor and become her salvation. Vincent. MMM. He stood up and pulled her close again. What do you think your father would say if he could see us now? Vincent considered this seriously. I hope, he'd be proud. Not of the man who spent 15 years seeking revenge, but of the man who finally learned to forgive. The man who chose love over anger. I think he would be proud, Jasmine agreed. And I think my mother would be too. She always said that love was the only thing that could heal a broken heart. Smart woman. The smartest. She would have loved you once you let her see past all those walls. I'm working on tearing down the walls. I know you are. And I'll be right there helping you every step of the way. They kissed again, soft and sweet under the stars, while inside the ballroom their family and friends continued celebrating. It was a perfect moment, the kind Jasmine had never dared to dream was possible. But it was also just the beginning. As they finally headed back inside to rejoin their party, Vincent caught Jasmine's hand and squeezed it gently. Thank you, he said. For what? For spilling wine on my shirt. For telling me the truth. For seeing something worth saving in a man who'd forgotten how to be human. Vincent's smile was soft and real, nothing like the predatory expression he'd worn when they first met. For giving me a family. Jasmine squeezed his hand back. Thank you for catching me when I fell. I'll always catch you. Promise. I promise. For the rest of our lives, Jasmine Caldwell soon to be Ashford, I will always catch you. They walked back into the ballroom together, where Kaya immediately ran over to show off the dance moves her grandfather had taught her. James beamed at them both, his earlier reservations about Vincent completely dissolved by months of watching the man prove himself through actions rather than words. Margaret and Richard Hartwell raised their glasses in a toast to the happy couple, and the entire room joined in, filling the air with the sound of crystal chiming and heartfelt congratulations. As Jasmine looked around at all the faces, some familiar, some new, all smiling with genuine joy for her happiness, she thought about the twisting path that had brought her to this moment. The struggles, the sacrifices, the fear and uncertainty that had defined so much of her life. All of it had led her here, to this ballroom, to this man, to this family she was building one choice at a time. Sometimes the best love stories started with the worst meet-cuties. Sometimes you had to lose everything to find what you really needed. And sometimes, if you were very lucky and very brave, you got the chance to rewrite your ending. Jasmine Caldwell had always believed in happy endings, even when they seemed impossible. Tonight, surrounded by love and laughter and the promise of tomorrow, she finally got to live in one. What's the most important lesson you've learned about love and second chances? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. The night ended with Vincent and Jasmine dancing alone on the empty ballroom floor, their foreheads touching as they swayed to music only they could hear. Outside, Chicago sparkled like a jewelry box, full of possibilities and dreams waiting to come true. They had found their way home to each other, and their story was just beginning.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.